What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Euroset Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I'm your host, Numac, coming to you post-game after the Vikings 27-25 win over the Packers, and what seemingly didn't feel like a close game the entire time until about the last 5 minutes of the game or so. Then we'll get into all that momentarily, but to join me, as always, is Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well despite the circumstances. Yeah, I would agree. This is not a really close game. It got fun at the end, but wasn't really in doubt of clutching away from the Vikings' hands.
No, it felt. I wasn't optimistic that they'd actually be able to get the stop after they scored the touchdown, mostly just because the defense hadn't been able to stop them all game, and we'll get that obviously to that in a minute. But yeah, this not a good showing for the Packers today. They really only played like a quarter, maybe a half a quarter of good football. Like it was just not an encouraging performance for them today in a game where we really expected them to come out and show out essentially. Like we talked about it all season long, and how they didn't beat the Eagles. They lost twice to the Lions and once before the Vikings, and hopefully be able to get over this hump, right, and beat one of those top three teams in the NFC. Ultimately, don't they go 0 for 5 on those games, and for record wise in the NFC, and it just wasn't an inspired game. I think they came out a little flat. The Jacobs uh, fumble doesn't help with that, and on the first drive. But even then, like they were close at halftime, right? It was 13-3 at halftime, if I'm not mistaken. And so,
Yep.
I mean, not a whole from the offense, but at least it was still close, right? The third quarter gets away from them, ends up just being a tough game to watch in general. So, I guess where do you want to start, Jordan? You want to start with the offense? You want to start with the defense? Because it'll be not a fun conversation either way.
I think we start the offense because I think they were ultimately the biggest to blame of it took 3 quarters for them to actually get going. Um,
Yeah,
and really like the touchdown before that was helped by the fact that Carrington Valentine got a pick and set them up at the 15-yard line. So, they did good things to, I guess, overcome the early and many deficiencies, but I would say the offense was just pretty lackluster in a
yeah,
way that we hadn't seen from them, I would say, all season. Um, I think again, it was a 27-25 loss, but they were just the Vikings had triple the amount of yards and offensive production that the Packers made this look like a game that should not have been a 27-25 game at all.
right, exactly. Jordan Love, 19 of 30, 185 yards and a touchdown, which comes in the fourth quarter to Malik Heath. Uh, I don't think he played well at all today, frankly. I thought he missed a lot of throws early. He was throwing a lot off his back foot. I think the pass rush and the blitz from the Vikings against Jordan Love really flustered him early and often. Like he was, he didn't look like prime Jordan Love is how I'll say it. He looked like he was just kind of throwing it up there and hoping to make a couple of throws then. And then the play calling to boot wasn't great. There was at one point, I think the second drive, they went three straight passes after the Jacob stumble, all of which were 15 yards down the field when they didn't need that. Like they just needed to chip away and get damage or get yards and just kind of move the ball down the field. And they hoist. I think the first one was an out route to Dobbs that fell short. Um, and there's then two deep balls in particular that were just like, I don't know what we're really doing here after after a drive like that. So uh, yeah, just not the best day from Jordan Love. It is what it is. And then the pass catchers in general, just not great today.
Yeah, this is a game where I felt like they missed Christian Watson in a big bad way. Jaden Reed, probably his worst game of the season, easily.
Yeah,
Um, it just when the Packers needed to make throws and complete throws, they were not in sync. Jordan Love was bouncing outside of the pocket,
hmm
not comfortable We talked plenty about the blitz that they would see. And yeah, it was a startling step back in that way of just like he didn't really look poised for a lot of the game. And even the throws that he kind of you're like, oh, that was a good throw. Jaden Reed dropped a couple. Like he just
Jane,
was not
yeah,
good.
he dropped the crucial, I think, fourth down pass when they
Yep.
went for it on fourth down. I think at their own 18 or something like that. They dropped
Which
that
obviously
pass.
looms large with the final score.
Yep. I mean,
It just
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it just feels so much like we know the script of when the Packers come up short. Like there was a similar script with the team last year of like, yeah, they played bad, but they were still in position to win, whether you believe it was really fruitful or not. It's obviously in the eye of the beholder, but I would still say that it was still disappointing to see like how out of sync they were. I think a lot of the things that we talked about coming into the game is like, what is going to be the run pass play dynamic? And it just didn't really feel like they had any feel for this game until like the fourth quarter, essentially, that they were making things happen. It was happening more consistently. Like once you started to see Love uncork some throws and it like down the seams, like the one to Tucker Craft or like the one to Romeo Dobbs, like that's what we were expecting to see. But I think for anybody that has questions about this offense and how it can, it feels like it's overflowing with water for a bad analogy. Like it just like you turn it on, it's like just pouring out, and then it dries up like as quick. And I felt like today was pretty much a microcosm of that.
Yeah, I would agree fully uh with your analysis that LaFleur didn't have a feel for this game whatsoever until the fourth quarter when they needed to get going, right? Like they were down 9 or what would have been I think 17, right? And they finally start moving the ball a little bit to get going, and suddenly you start seeing Romeo Dobbs get the ball a couple times, and he makes a few
Yep.
really good catches, and then same thing like I said, Tucker Kraft making a good catch and getting a lot of yards after the catch. Like where was that the entire game? Like it was really frustrating to watch them operate in the fourth quarter, like how you think they should operate the entire game. And I understand that some of that is circumstantial with how the Vikings defense is going to play the like play defense in the fourth up 17, but it doesn't mean that those options weren't there entirely. And I don't know, it just was like you said, a frustrating day to watch this offense operate because I mean, like you said, Jaden Reed, arguably his worst game as a Packer, one catch for 6 yards, has a couple of drops, I believe. I mean, a lot of players had drops today. I remember Romeo Dobbs had at least, or not Romeo Dobbs, Dontayvion Wicks had at least one. Jaden Reed had a couple. Uh, I don't think Bo had a drop, but might have been a
Misconnection.
misconnection. Yeah, but I just don't think the passing game was that good today. And
No.
and you say they missed Christian Watson, and I'll say okay, but in the same breath, I'll argue that against a lesser opponent last week, the passing offense also didn't look as good, right? Like they didn't
Yeah.
really do much in the passing game last week. It was all on the ground. And that's kind of like 2 straight weeks in a row now where the passing game just kind of looks a little iffy. And that's not really where you want to be heading into the playoffs. Like I don't think anybody played a really good game today. Like I don't mean to be that harsh, but I mean, going around the team, who would you say had a good game? I guess we'll just say on offense for now. We'll get to the defense later, but I wouldn't say anybody had a really good game today on offense. Jacobs
I
ends
think
up.
Dobbs maybe had the best case of getting there, but it was
I
still
mean,
not like a perfect performance.
even
And
then, I
much of it
think
too is
all of
like,
it was like in the fourth quarter.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say is like the Vikings didn't really put their foot off the gas pedal, but it wasn't like there were some catches that he was making where they weren't as sticky to him. But he did have some
He,
great breaks on
he
routes, which were
the Discord said he had one of the most incredible drops of all time, where he was. It's a comeback route towards the sideline. I forget the actual name of the route, but towards the sideline, and he's like falling as he catches it, and then as he like lands, he just drops it. But it's like I
Yeah.
don't know how he dropped it. Like I don't know first how he caught it, two how he dropped it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Outside of Dobbs, I mean, maybe Josh Jacobs, it wasn't as good. I felt that a lot of the run plays today were just felt very like excruciating. It just felt like, yeah, I mean, like as much as he is like the touchdown that got taken away from that like it was a warranted holding call, but like that was his best play by far, and obviously it doesn't show up in the box score because it gets taken away. But it just felt like a lot of like the run through the Vikings defensive front kind of runs, like the inside runs, they had total like control over those. And I mean, it's still a credit to him that he still finished with 17 carries, 69 yards, and a touchdown. But for me, he was kind of the guy that I was cluing in on. I just don't think, honestly, I don't think it was helped by the fact that the offense looked so neutered for the first 2.5 quarters at minimum.
yeah, this is from Zachary Jacobson. Sort of to your point, both Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love lament the team's lack of preparation for what the Vikings did defensively. The Packers weren't expecting as much man coverage as they saw today, and they both expressed frustration that they didn't adjust quickly enough to account for that. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it pre-pod, right?
I have a stat for that too.
Yeah, we okay. One moment.
Sorry, sorry, sorry,
It's
sorry.
okay. It's okay. We talked about that pre-pod and that this team, the Vikings defense, plays a lot of zone coverage in their secondary. Like that's just how they play. And then to come out and to play primarily man, and a lot of what they saw today was man, from what they're saying. Yeah, I'm sure that does throw a wrinkle in things. I don't think it excuses how bad they looked at like the third quarter though. You know what I mean? Like I don't know the ins and outs of practices and what they go through before the games on Sunday, but I have to imagine they didn't just practice against zone defense, right? Like
Yeah,
I'd hope they'd have some plays in the playbook for against man, and then if that's the case, it's not a good look
it's
from
not great.
that's not a good look from Matt LaFleur. Like, still love the guy, still think he's a great coach, but it, I, to be this not ready is not great. And so what is your stat about the man
Next
coverage?
gen stats, Vikings played man coverage on 47.1% of their dropbacks, the second highest rate in a game this season, including 11 third, 13 third, and fourth down dropbacks. In week four, by comparison, the Vikings played man coverage on a season low 10.7% of dropbacks. Yeah, it's not great. I think that's where, as much as Matt LaFleur is a really good coach, there are times where it does feel like, 3 out of 17 games a year, he does get a little caught flat-footed. And Brian Flores coming from the Bill Belichick tree of like, you're going to treat every game differently. You're not going to just roll out the same tendencies, the same
Yeah,
scheme. I think that's where it just goes back down to the Packers were just chasing the game from the very start, and their response or the timeliness or lack thereof in responding to getting back into the game proved to be fatal. I mean, it was no different than week
yeah,
4.
100%, 100%. Like I think that's a great point. Like that is didn't make the adjustments fast enough, which is something to be said about the coaching staff and how they implement those changes and things like that. But um, yeah, it just the offense looked weird today. I didn't really understand the a lot of the decisions from LaFleur at certain times. Like we talked about, or not we talked about, but in the past we've talked about when does Matt LaFleur go for it, right? When does he go for it on fourth down? Is it just gonna be a hard count, etc.? Well, they don't go for it and kick the field goal in the red zone. I think inside the 5, if I'm not mistaken. When they take the 3-0 lead to begin the scoring, and then they don't. Then they do go for it at the 18-yard line, wherever it was when Jaden Reed drops that pass over the middle, and um, we see the cuts of Matt LaFleur throwing a tantrum is what I'll call it. He
Yeah.
was not happy. But this is from Jason Hirschhorn. Packers Matt LaFleur, head coach Matt LaFleur on his fourth down decisions. It's just a gut thing. I've said that a million times. I don't like that. That's his answer. Like the way the NFL has shifted in recent years is to rely on analytics of when to go for it, right? Like I think that's what's nice about Dan Campbell's offense and the other teams that go for him fourth down oftentimes is that they rely on the analytics to tell them when they should go for it, and then based on that, they go from the field, the game, and what if they should go for it, right? And I think
Yeah.
this is I don't think Matt LaFleur is implementing that whatsoever. If it's a gut decision for him of when to go for it, like I think at that point you just have to trust in your players to be able to get a first down or be able to get a touchdown on the inside the 5 yard line essentially, and that's where I think like the next like development thing for Matt LaFleur is like to go to. I think like it's hard that it's been what now 5 years he's been in the role, 6 years, yeah,
6.
and so you'd think that that would have made the jump to him by now, and I'm surprised it hasn't. And I think once he does do that, if he ever does do that, I think this offense has a chance to like be as good as it's capable of being, because we saw it with when they scored the touchdown to Lake Heath. Like this team has plays inside the and like when they're close like that to run it in, and even then early on in the game, like if it's what third drive, not even second quarter yet, if you pin the Vikings back deep on their own 3 4 yard line, you don't get the touchdown. They still have to drive 97 yards. Like, and I know, like Tom Brady was talking about how he just wanted to take the points on the road and it's like make sure you don't come away with nothing. I think that's a different NFL. It's just a different NFL to when that was the mantra, just to take the points and get out, especially against a team like Minnesota who has been so good this year and their offense was clicking all season and all day today.
Yeah, it again, they were dogged by inconsistencies, and I think that came down to the play calling and decision making. You know, we saw it in the Seattle game too, and as much as that was an easy victory, we still had some quabbles.
Mm-hmm.
It just is not it's not a good look to see the passing offense still it feels very like it's taken a back seat compared to the power running game, and when that's taken away, they don't have a counter.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's good at this point in the year.
No, I don't think it's much good at all. Like the running game has been their bread and butter all year this year, right? Like that's just what they've made their living on is Josh Jacobs running the ball and having 90 to 100 yards from scrimmage every game. And this today, I he might have gotten there. Let me pull up the box score quick, but 17 rushes, 69 yards, and a touchdown for Josh Jacobs, and he had no catches. So no, he doesn't get to that 90-yard mark. Doesn't get to 70. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. Like I, I think you're right in that when the run game doesn't work for them, it hasn't looked good the past few weeks, including this week, when they can't throw the ball. And I don't
Yeah.
know what has happened, what sort of has changed, but I feel like it has to get going, right? Like I think what you want to see going into next week against the Bears, and again another good defense. Like say what you say about the Bears, like I think they're probably going to play hard next week because they're probably mostly playing for their jobs as well as
Yeah.
like though no Bears player is going to not play hard against the Packers. At least you wouldn't think so, but you just have to be able to see this passing offense work, especially in the last home game of the year, and all for all intents and purposes. And so
Yeah.
you want to hope they get hot, but they have to change something between now and then because the last 3 weeks have not looked good for the offense because it looks like they're spinning their tires. Like the nothing is easy for them anymore. When it used to be short throws kind of over the middle and then some deep shots. There's been a lot of deep shots that I think have been ill advised from Jordan Love and the offense. And like I don't want
Yeah.
to rag on Adam Stenavich or anything because I don't think that this is the time for it. But I just I wonder sometimes is where I'll leave that.
Yeah.
So alrighty, let's talk about the defense. Obviously, giving up 27 points not ideal, and 377 yards to Sam Darnold is also not ideal.
Career
It
high.
pretty yeah doesn't surprise me. That's a career high for him. 3 touchdowns and interception. He's only sacked once. I think the story of the game here is that the the pass rush just could not and would not get home today. They were a second late the entire game. I mean, how many? I'm really not excited to look at how many pressures they had this game because I feel like the pressures and the hurries is going to be like at least 10 and they'll
Mhm.
only have one sack to show for it. Like they were getting close to Darnold all day long, but he never felt the actual urge just to to scramble or to be in, or that he was in trouble essentially. And for all intents and purposes, he was comfortable all day back there. I think Brady said at one point where it was Carl Brooks, I believe, got the sack. Uh, the one sack that Darnold had is like,
Yeah.
well, Darnold felt comfortable all day today, and if you feel comfortable, you're not going to be as quick to scramble, and that's the one sack that happened is that he was so well protected all day he didn't feel the need to scramble, and that's exactly the case because it nobody could get home today. Rashawn Gary missed a sack that ended up paying off because Brooks got a hand on the pass, so it wasn't anything detrimental. And then I think Aaron Mosby missed a sack. They were all over today. I didn't see Kenny Clark's number much at all today,
No.
and so it was just it's a really bad day from the pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's like one sack to what you were doing despite many pressures, but it's like 33 or 43. Sam Darnold outside of a few bad throws, including that pick, like was pretty comfortable. So that's where for all the struggles that they've had in coverage today, and it felt like we'll get into more of like that the back half of the defense is like it starts with not getting your pass rush there. That's why a guy like Jalen Naylor, who is just always open at like where the zone breaks, they just did perfect time like play designs to take advantage of the Packers pass rush and then find the this soft spot in the zone coverage. So yeah, that it's the defense is still like I still have belief in it, but I do think we are again. It's not I'm saying this as they had an interception, but it's not like they're not the same level of turnover generating machine. Like it's not, again, there's no equilibrium with dangerous pass rush versus like a team like the Vikings who has the leads the league in generating turnovers, does really well in forcing blitzes, like pressures, all that stuff. Packers just don't have that rarely in the same game.
No, very rarely. And I think like to your point about like the turnover machine, they get one from Carrington Valentine this game and on a really nice interception. But the days of Xavier McKinney getting deep passes have kind of gone by the wayside. And I think that's just teams wisening up to how the Packers were going to play defense with X back there, and I think he's been sort of nullified in the defense with just how the secondary's been injured and plagued throughout this season, and so I don't think he's still a good player, obviously, but I think his impact on the team has definitely waned since the I would say at least the bye, and
Yeah.
so uh I don't know. It's just to keep with the pass rush. There needs to be more there. Brenton Cox Jr. I don't think gets home today. Obviously, no one besides Carl Brooks did, but we just need to see a little more juice there, and I think that's what makes the upcoming draft important. Not to get into draft talk this early, but I think there's pieces missing on this defense that I don't want to say they're a year away, but like I think this defense has been good this year, but it's been a lot of the same things plaguing it, right? The pass rush hasn't been be able to get home against like essentially good offenses, I would say, this year.
Yeah.
And the secondary just needs to get healthy. That's pretty much it. Like get Jair back, get Evan Williams back. I don't think he played today.
No, he
And
was out.
so
Zane Anderson left the game
with the
due to
concussion,
concussion. I felt like that was a game-changing injury too, because they didn't have any
no, Javon Bullard is
pop.
forced to play all over the field at that point. Then I thought Keyshawn had a nice game. Like honestly, He had that really nice pass pickup on Jordan Addison in the end zone that saved a touchdown, and then on the next play he stopped Darnold from scrambling that forced a punt, and so I think he's honestly risen to the occasion incredibly this season. I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how they utilize him moving forward, but yeah, I think this team penalties didn't help either. He had a penalty against Justin Jefferson that was a hold that I don't really think was a hold, but
I felt like that was similar to the Byron Murphy one where that
I would
had
agree with
happened
that.
the drive to similar or like the previous drive. So if you're calling it that recently, you're gonna call it on that one too.
Yep, exactly. And so I don't know, like you know who honestly, if you're talking about guys who had great games today, Adrian Cooper is a dog, man.
Yeah.
He was flying all over the field. At one point, Aaron Jones picked up Edgerrin Cooper on a blitz, and the broadcast Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady just talk about how great of a blitz pickup that was by Aaron Jones. Next play, Edgerrin Cooper comes downhill and just wallops Aaron Jones to give him like a 2 yard loss, and he was just flying all over the field today. Like they have a guy in Edgerrin Cooper, and I'm glad to see that he wasn't totally nullified today just by the state of the defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I just there wasn't consistent or game breakers, playmakers, whatever you want to call it. But Cooper really showed up. I mean, 4 tackles for losses was really good. He's good. Um, but yeah, like it just felt like the to going back to the Vikings offense, they did such a good job of like the guy would be like Xavier McKinney. I felt like they would replay his coverage like 3 or 4 times, and the Justin Jefferson effect of like he's got to have eyes on him opened up over the top throws for Jalen Nailor for the first touchdown, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Like it just could not have been more of a different game plan. Like even if you're a Vikings fan, you look at like, well, they only won by two. I've not been a believer about the Vikings at all this year, and a performance like this where they have a really good game manager, creative game mind, can do it over the course of a 60 minutes, and Brian Flores being, if not the best defense coordinator, one of the best three. It's like that team is humming and it's not stopping. And I feel like again, it just comes down to when you're playing as bad as the Packers did to start the game, you're not going to win. You're just not going to win,
No,
even if it looks better. Like it really, the final score was window dressing, in my mind, but
yeah,
it was never fully there compared to where it was for the Vikings.
no, they're a darn good team. That's really all there is to it, and it sucks that again, Packers what 5 losses now have come to the best three teams in the NFC. It's frustrating that they couldn't get over any of those humps in any of those games. Like I think there's context to the Eagles game, obviously, but they got flat out outplayed in 2 of the 4 games against the Lions and the Vikings, and were just made too many mistakes to be able to win the close ones against them. That's really all it comes down to. Like
Yep.
I think this team has the ability to beat both of those teams, but they need to play their best ball in order to do that. Unlike where if the Vikings and the Lions are playing their best ball, I think they kind of handle the Packers easily, as we've seen already
Yeah.
twice this year. And it sucks to say that, but I think that's the reality of where we're at with this team right now. And I'm still optimistic about the playoffs. Like I think if they can figure out what's going wrong against the Bears next week, they have a chance in any game. Like any given Sunday is one of the honestly more true sports cliches in sports
Yeah.
because you see it all the time where teams shouldn't be making runs and yet they do, and that's why you play the game. Is anything can happen, tip balls and stuff like that, and you get going on offense, you get into kind of a rhythm. But I mean, I think I saw it, yeah, on Jacob Morley talking about how their path in the playoffs just might be if they if the Commanders win tonight against the Falcons and win next week against the Cowboys and the Packers. I think the Packers. Well, no, if the Commanders win both, it doesn't matter. I don't think. I forget the scenarios, but I mean, they just might have to go and face Eagles, Lions, or Eagles, Lions, Vikings, and then the other
Yeah.
one of those two. Like that'd be
Yeah.
that's an incredibly hard run to do if that's what they have to do to make the Super Bowl. But it's just it's just tough because, like I said, the Packers are needing to play their best ball to beat those teams. When those teams are able to make mistakes and still have a good shot at winning because they're so well rounded and good teams.
Yeah, it can't be situational. You can't have the game of your life against like a team like San Francisco who's down bad or like
That at least
Miami.
let us have that.
I know, but like I do think again, I feel like I'm not trying to be a downer, but it's very realistic that the Packers' best is just not good enough compared to what stands ahead of them.
No, not
You know,
it's entirely possible. Like I would like to see them get out against the Bears next week and run up the score and then sit their starters the rest of the second half. That'd be ideal. Let Lake Willis take the rest of the game. But at the same time, I don't think you're entirely wrong there, Jordan, because this team is even younger than they were last year. They still make a lot of the stupid mistakes. I think what we had at least two plays today called back due to an illegal formation call. And
two neutral zone infractions, which contributed to the field goal too.
yep, like it's there's a lot of mistakes in this game. A lot of mistakes that led to points getting off the board or first downs being taken off. And so it's just it's just hard to overlook that when we thought they had fixed it, right? They had went a good stretch there without making these dumb mistakes. And I don't know if it was a focus thing or what happened. Like it's the week after Christmas. Like if we want to make excuses, yada yada yada. But I don't know. Like I think they just need to get this experience under their belts. And as for the rest of the guys on the offense and on the defense, I don't really know like what you do with guys like Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed, who are second and third year veterans who should be able to be sort of like leaders on this team, right? Like Jaden Reed early in the season felt like he was emerging as a leader and then
Yeah,
has since really cooled off.
it's
Like
regressed.
it's regressed heavily. I don't really know what happened there. Like if it's he's just getting more attention as wide receiver one or what's going on there, but it hasn't been good for him, you know? Like I don't know if you want to call it a sophomore slump, that might just be what it is. Same thing with like how we saw um Wicks come alive last year and then starts off the year a little slower. He's gotten better, still a couple of noteworthy drops. And so it's just like ugh.
Yeah,
I don't know where the leadership comes from on this team outside of Jordan Love. Like that's where it needs to come from. Maybe Josh Jacobs, he's a veteran and things like that, but they have to get this experience under their belts and learn from it quickly to make the most of the season.
yeah, yeah. It's there's nothing much you can do when your best players aren't playing well. Like we can talk until we're blue in the face, but if guys like Jaden Reed or Josh Jacobs is puts in like a B minus level performance like he did today, arguably, um, yeah, you're not going to go anywhere. And I think that's where you know 2 weeks away from the playoffs, it's going to be very interesting how this offense looks when postseason comes around.
Yeah, because I mean, looking ahead, if they get three, like if they end up the sixth seed, and then, like we're Falcons fans tonight, and so the if they get the sixth seed and they have to go up against what would it be the Rams, like at this point,
Yeah,
like that's encouraging. We've already beaten the Rams on the road this year, a team we know we can beat, but with no Jair, that might be different, and so um they have a chance there. But I mean, looking at how the game might go tonight, like the Commanders, all they need to do is win tonight against the Falcons team that is still playing for something, and then against the Cowboys next week, who are playing for absolutely nothing. And I think CD shut down the rest. Like CD didn't play,
yeah,
isn't,
he got shut down.
and so that'll be a cakewalk game for them if they need to play it at all, kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's just the team needs to get going, and I'm not sure how you do that with like the game to play next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to play your entirety of your starters if you're not playing for anything. Like say Washington loses tonight, and I think yeah, if Washington loses tonight. I don't know what the tiebreaker is. I wish I did. Let me go see if I can figure that
They
out
would have the
quick.
tiebreaker over the NFC West division winner.
What'd you say?
I believe they have the tiebreaker over the NFC West division winners, so they would like
The Commanders
set
do?
set. I may have been half reading Adam Schefter tweet and reporting that as knowledge.
Because I don't know what the Packers situation is for the Commanders tiebreaker. Is my point here, because if let's say the Commanders lose tonight, the Falcons win, and then next week the Packers lose and the Commanders win. Yeah, they'd still be. Yeah, the Packers would be the sixth seed. So
Yeah,
Commanders have to win out for um to get the sixth seed. If the Packers just win next week against the Bears, I believe they're in. Unless the Commanders win tonight and and next week, obviously. But I don't know. And Andrew just reported to me that Michael Penix had an awful pick already, so it's not. It hasn't
let's
started
go.
well.
Let's go.
That's a bad thing, Jordan. We want the Falcons
I
to
know,
win.
I
The
know,
Falcons to
I
win.
know.
So, uh, anybody else we should talk about? This is a relatively shorter pod we got going here, but I just don't know who else really to talk about, because it wasn't a good game. There wasn't much to encouraging to talk about, and I feel like we will talk ourselves through blue in the face. We talk about the pass rush not getting home and the secondary being injured and not being able to cover Justin Jefferson, right? Like, I think the point
Yeah,
is just that Carrington Valentine, Eric Stokes, and company can't cover all those guys by themselves. Like, and I know Jair's only one guy, but secondary is thin, as we've mentioned. It gets thinner without Evan Williams in there and Zane Anderson going down. And it was a perfect storm of the defense just not being able to get many stops today. That's really
yeah.
all it was. Like, I wonder. Let me check the stats here. I'm curious as to how many third down conversions the Vikings had today.
Oh, it's a lot. It had to been a
Uh,
lot.
they were 6 of 12. Weirdly enough, the Packers were 8 of 14.
Hmm.
It felt a lot more from the Vikings. I'm
It felt
totally
more
with you.
lopsided.
It felt way more lopsided. But maybe it was just them getting first downs on second down and such too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just an efficient game for the Vikings for sure. 70 plays, 441 yards, 6.3 yards per play. That's a winning formula, if you ask me. So I don't know. We need to see the line get better. Line wasn't good today. Jordan Love was scrambling all over. Rasheed Walker got beaten multiple times,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I feel like where I'm headed with my points here is a lot of off-season topics, like what do you do with the line outside of Rasheed Walker and probably Josh Myers moving on? What do you do in the draft, and who do you go get in free agency? I just don't want to have those conversations right now, but I think like that's where we're at as to why this went so poorly.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think it's not fun to have to talk about the off-season topics that, are right around the corner whenever, they lose in the playoffs, but
Right. And
it's just not all there. It's just not all there.
no, and that's to say again. I think this team can go on a run. Like, I think they can win 2 games in the playoffs. They can. I think they have a good chance at beating the Rams if that's who they pull. I think
Yeah.
they played the Eagles close in the beginning of the year. I think that has a chance to be a close game. Again, it'll be a different environment being in Philadelphia.
Really.
But at the same time, like, Jalen Hurts probably isn't playing next week, and he'll be 2 weeks rested essentially, and that's a situation for some rust, as optimistic as you want to be about that kind of thing, but they'll still have to stop Saquon Barkley, which they weren't capable of doing the first time. For all intents and purposes, they held Aaron Jones to a pretty mediocre day in general today. So like another good job from the run defense stopping the run. But at the same time, like I'm still scared of Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Devonta Smith.
Well, just think of all those teams, the Vikings, the Eagles, the Lions, all these teams that are vying for the number one seed or at the top of the pecking order. It's like they have four weapons that you have to cover at all times.
Yep.
You know what I mean, it's not
Yep.
it's not like one-sided. And that's really tough for any defense, but I think especially for a Packers defense that is really thin in the secondary, and we're holding a lot of hope on Jair being able to come back.
And B. Jair.
Yeah, as much as that feels misguided.
Well, no, I know what you're saying, but I'm adding to your point of
Oh
hoping
yeah,
he
yeah.
comes back, but then hoping he comes back and
It's
is
Jair
the
Alexander.
right, exactly.
Yeah, that's where it's gonna be really tough. Even the Rams too, like Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. It wasn't like the Packers. They beat the Rams, but it came down to fourth down stop that signified like Evan Williams looking like a solid pro. So
Right.
it's just not all there, but we'll see how the games shake out.
Yeah. And to people's points or to people on Twitter's points, like the Vikings and Lions next week are playing a very, very big game for the division
Yep.
and the number one seed. So they're gonna be like full bore going the entire time. And so that's a plus for them. For the Packers. Should they get the 6 seed win, they would play the winner of the 3 or the 4-5 game, which would be the
Yeah.
Lions or the Vikings. And if you're playing that hard for again this many weeks in a row, you're just another outs out of the tank is what I'll say. A gallon out of the tank or whatever you want to call it. Just like you're exerting a lot of energy to
Energy, yeah.
win these games, and if they're 4-0, then that's good. So
Yeah.
we shall see. Alrighty. Anything else, Jordan, or should we wrap up here? I'm seeing a lot of discussion on Twitter about the horrific reffing this game, and I don't think we should get into that.
It's not those discussions never they don't lead to anything good.
No,
It's like,
no. But
yeah,
yeah, I think a lot of people have a gripe with uh
the field goal.
the field goal, the not being offsides. Like they're drawing the lines and everything that they were offsides. I guess Justin Jefferson didn't catch the second down pass or something.
Mm.
It hit the ground, but whatever it may be. So, but all right,
I don't
Jordan.
share quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold is not one as much as I thought he was.
As much as we thought he was going to be, no, he's having a pretty darn good year. I'm not sure what they're going to do in the offseason. We'll have those discussions in the future, but briefly, it's intriguing.
Very intriguing. They always find themselves in these
Weird
interesting quarterback
situations.
decisions.
Yeah, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, folks. Thank you for tuning in to this live version of Talk of the Tundra. You can find all of our stuff over at gspn.info, our premium Substack page, where you can subscribe to for $8 a month to get all these pods ad free, as well as the GSPN After Darks, the full catalog of them as well. Check out all things Bucks over at Eurostep and When in Six, as the Bucks hopefully get Giannis back soon, as the flu is going rampant through their locker room. And then all things Brewers, Cruising for Bruising with Adam and Andrew, and then Adam and Andrew as well hosting Make Time for This. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back in your podcast feeds on Friday as we preview the Bears game and the final game of the regular season. Here's to playing better next week, as Seek said in the chat. Hopefully we're celebrating a victory to cap the season off and head in the postseason. So, like I said, folks, thank you for listening, and Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.